Hey everyone, welcome back here to my channel where I play Planet Zoo. My name is Nissa and today we're gonna take a look at the Dall Sheep, or at least build a little for them and talk a little bit about why they actually are very important in a lot of conservation projects, though they are not endangered at all themselves. So if you want to hear more about that or simply see how I built this very large habitat for them, then please keep watching. And we actually start the story today far away from Canada, which is here in Denmark where I live, because I think a week or so ago me and my mom was just watching local news as you do, and we just got a new release of bovines here in Denmark. These was goats, but it's not an uncommon thing at this point that when we have a natural area that simply or either dying because of lack of diversity of animals, or the fact that the public just use too much money on trying to restoring areas, then we release a bovine of some sort. The one closest to us is the forest here in my little town, and here we have actually milk cows that were released, where it was pregnant female cows that were released, and then they could have their little flock out there. It didn't go totally well because people in the area generally didn't understand the normal rules about these creatures, one being that they are massive, and if a dog or something frightens them, then it can go bad. So please don't take your dog in there, especially if you can't control it. But besides that, yeah, it actually is something that helps nature a lot. Bovines have either fairly liquid, which would be cows, very liquid waste, or fairly small waste, for instance sheep and goats that have these small pebbles that they deliver. Both of these helps out a lot. They are not like poop aren't a good thing alone, but combined with a big number of smaller animals, insects, and so on, these can be eaten by other things and breaking down to nutrients that we really want in these areas. So already there we help nature a lot. We bring out a animal that isn't there, more diversity. We feed smaller insects and animals with either the poop, the pee, or the meat on the animal. If they die at some point, they will of course naturally die at some point. So therefore we help nature a lot already there. Then these smaller creatures can break down the poo, and even worms that just poop out dirt. Their poop then are really nutritious poop that plants can eat, and therefore restore a lot of plant and foliage in the area. A lot of areas are already dying either because of over tree chopping, which is something we just haven't been aware of before, and some of them are simply dying because of pollution in the areas or other factors that just kills everything. Now while we have a heat wave in Denmark, which is really tough on a lot of plants, so these extra nutrients when the water finally comes can help these plants get fully restored as fast as possible. As I already mentioned, there can be a few issues by having something as big as a 500 kilos cow. So therefore, of course, for most people, it would make more sense to go for a sheep or a goat. So I got into, well, what would you do in Canada? Because in Canada, it's not only about restoring the animals, but a lot of the issues the animals in the areas have is that the areas they live in are dying. And therefore I thought, well, are they actually putting out some type of bovine for this specific issues? Or is there places where it would make sense to do so? Or is there places just magically okay and that's not the issue? And sadly, no nature in the world is just magically okay. But there's a few different ways you can do this, because when you release animals to out in the wild, you also have a certain responsibility for them to be okay. You can't just put them out there to starve or become sick or something like that. Yes, there will be a few things where, for instance, a big carnivore takes them. You can't really help that at all. But besides that, you have certain responsibility for the animals you put out there. So one thing is simply releasing the animals and then have some kind of... in Denmark we have, what's they called in English? I don't remember, but forest runners that work specifically to help the forest keep an eye on all wild animals out there, and therefore also the released animals, which makes sense. Another way is simply the fact that you borrow animals. A lot of farmers have a lot of animals that they do not need the entire year. For instance, these can be young animals waiting to grow up for either producing milk or just needing to gain weight before they can be slaughtered. Or they do not have, for instance, with sheeps, they're not old enough for the wool to come out and be cut yet. So you can simply borrow these animals for a while and put them out in the areas needed. And then when the farmers need them back, then hopefully all of the grass is trimmed at that point and all the plants have gotten a few nutrients. This could, for instance, be from spring to fall, and then during the winter when there wouldn't be a lot of food anyway for the animals, then the farmers get the animals back and they will then some of the next generation out the next year, which again help the farmers also because they don't have to pay for the food in that time. Again, animals are not cheap to keep at all, so that's a win-win for the government and the farmer. This is something that, for instance, have happened in Montreal, where a farmer put out his sheep. This article, I will link it below. It's from Montreal and a lot of things I can't pronounce. I'm sorry, but it is linked below. Where the organization Bequits sends out a flock of sheep with their shepherd to grass at Maisonneuve Park in Rosemont La Petite Patrie. Sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing that at all. And they will stay until September, and then the farmer will take them back, of course. Again, helping both the nature, the government, and the farmer at the same time. And when you can help all the way around this way, it is kind of weird that it doesn't happen more often. This article also mentioned that it has been a tradition since 2017, but they do not mention the exact species of sheep. However, sheep are pretty much the lawnmowers of the nature, like most bovines are, since they do not hurt the grass they graze on. Some of them also, depending on breed and subspecies and so on, will eat more like bushes. Some of them will eat more grasses, but overall the idea is the same. When we look specific at the Dall sheep, it is a little harder to see if there have been a lot of work with them specifically. When I Google Dall Sheep in Canada, most of the things are like even Danish websites with hunting travels to Canada and Alaska. So yeah, however, I did see the other day and I forgot to save the article. So if I find it, it will be linked below. But if I can't, I'm sorry. But there are Dall Sheep in Yukon National Park that we also have talked about before on my channel, which I think is also the place where the wood bison have been released. So again, it makes sense that they live together here. It's just weird that I can't find it now. However, if we go by what we mentioned earlier with borrowing bovines for this, it doesn't make sense to use the Dall Sheep because you would use whatever the farmers already have. You wouldn't make them have specific breeds just for this, because they would need to use the breed for something else afterward, being wool, leather, meat, milk, whatever. So it would be up to the farmer which subspecies and then breed they would use. However, if you actually release them to be wild animals, as you for instance can do in a national park, you would on the other hand have different issues, being that you need to keep an eye on them, because again you do have some kind of responsibility, which if they are part of a big protected area already, that would be awesome. But if you send them out somewhere where hunters will come and just take them that way, then it would be pretty counteractive. But in these protected areas, I also do assume you would go for something that would be a little more rare, which is also why I do understand that if the Dall Sheep are used for these purposes, then it wouldn't be the story you would throw out there first. Then you rather throw the story out there with the species that are very endangered. However, I did choose the Dall Sheep over a lot of other sheeps and goats for this today, and one being the fact that I wanted it to be something smaller. And this is especially because of some places up north it can be helpful to be not too big. We also needed someone that actually would survive in the freezing climate of Canada and also the top of the United States, of course. The Dall Sheep live within both the cold and the polar climate zones, which is goddamn cold if you haven't noticed. In Canada we also have a lot of mountains, and therefore it's very important that they do actually also natively live in mountains and rocky areas for biomes, but also places with scrublands and grasslands. And even though the Canadian grasslands are a little pale compared with grasslands further south, it still helps them out a lot and give them a good opportunity to live easily and need as less help as possible. Again, you do not want something that is really weak and maybe break their legs on the rocks or anything like that, because not all sheep and goats are actually built for climbing rocks and mountains, even though we kind of picture them that way in cartoons, for instance. Another thing that makes this specific subspecies of sheep useful in this account is the fact that you could actually regulate the breeding quite easily. Again, if you do not plan to have them out there for long, because these do not naturally need a ram in any account unless it is for breeding. The flock will in nature only be eves, lambs, immature rams and yearlings, being males not able to breed yet. Then mature males will have a separate group for themselves, not depending on the females, and only interact with the females when it's time for breeding. Again, no matter if you have a group that you only set out for the summer, or you have a group that's supposed to live out there, it is quite useful that you can actually regulate how often you want them to breed, and maybe even how many of them you want to breed, because even if you introduce a ram, he will not mate with everyone the same day. So you could choose only to let one ram get in one day a year and you would get a lower number, or you could wrap up the numbers with getting a lot of rams out there for a while to make sure that everyone becomes pregnant, because even though we want them out there, we still want a stable number so we don't turn over nature with a wink. So again, it feels weird that you would have to regulate nature to make it strong, but you do not want them to eat all of the foliage in the area, even though you want their feeding habits and their poop to nurture nature. I know it sounds a little counteractive, but there is a reason behind these things. One thing also that will help you choose if you want the Dall Sheep in this case would be the fact that they simply are mainly grassers. They eat different kinds of grasses, shrubs and sedges, but leave the higher foliage like plants alone. Only in fall they will go for willows, mosses and higher plants if they need, and there simply isn't enough grass left for them. But again, if it is a group you only put out in the summer, they will still leave these alone. That could either be because the natural bushes and higher foliage in the area aren't doing so well in the area, so it needs a break. Or it could be because you want other kinds of grassers or foliivores to eat these higher plants to again expand on the biodiversity on a area. Anyway, guys, as most of you guys probably already know, this Tuesday, we will get the new DLC. Therefore, it will take a minute or two before we get back to Future Life Canada, but I won't leave it unless I absolutely have to. But it should survive when all of the mods get updated. So we will get back here, but maybe it takes a while. Next week we have a lot to do. We have a lot of new DLC animals to build for, and I will start building Tuesday. However, I'm not sure if I get a video out Tuesday evening or if it will wait to Wednesday. We will figure that out next week. Until then, guys, enjoy the cinematics and I will come back afterwards. Okay, guys, that's all I got for you today. I really hope you enjoyed it. And as always, guys, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you know the next time I upload a video. I really hope to see you again, either in the comments below or in the next video. Bye, guys.